Good morning, ma'am.
Hello, good morning. Am
Good
I
morning, ma'am.
audible? Am I
Yes, ma'am.
audible? And are you able to see the screen?
Yes,
The
ma'am. You're
slide?
audible and screen is visible, ma'am.
Okay, shall we start the class?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, you have taken the attendance, no?
Yes, ma'am.
So today we are going to discuss about the fetus in utero. That is how the fetus lies in the uterus in the amniotic sac. So today we are going to discuss about what is lie, presentation, presenting part, attitude, denominator and position. So this is an important class both for practicals and also viva and also theory part. So if you have any doubts, you can ask immediately. So first we are going to discuss about the lie. So what is lie? The relationship of the long axis of the fetus to the long axis of the centralized uterus or the maternal spine. So the long axis of the fetus in relation to the maternal spine. So we have to see whether it is a longitudinal lie or a transverse lie, oblique or unstable lie. So most common lie is the longitudinal lie, which constitutes 99.5%. And the transverse lie, oblique lie and unstable lie constitutes 0.5%. So the majority of them are in the longitudinal lie. The longitudinal lie can be either cephalic or a breech presentation. So here you will be seeing, so you have seen these diagrams. The first one is the cephalic presentation and the podalic presentation where you can, so here you are able to see the longitudinal lie, cephalic, and this is the podalic and this is the transverse lie. So next coming to the presentation. So what is presentation? The part of the fetus which occupies the lower pole of the uterus is called the presentation. It can be either cephalic, which constitutes 96.5%, podalic, that is breech presentation is present in 3% of the cases, shoulder presentation and other presentations constitutes 0.5%. And what is the compound presentation? So these three of the cephalic, podalic and shoulder presentation, etc. Here only one part of the fetus is in the lower pole, but more than one part if they are present in the lower pole, like a head and the arm or a shoulder and the arm, then that is called a compound presentation. When more than one part of the fetus is present in the lower pole of the uterus, then that is called a compound presentation. So here you are seeing the abnormal presentation. So normal presentation is the cephalic presentation and these are the abnormal presentations. So face, brow, breech, shoulder, all of them constitutes the abnormal presentations. Then coming to presenting part. So what is the definition of the presenting part? And most of the time we take presentation and presenting part as synonyms. But there is a slight difference. Presenting part is much more precise. So the part of presentation which overlies the internal os is called the presenting part. So what do you mean by presentation? So in the presentation, the part of the fetus which is present in the lower pole is called the presentation. But to be more precise, the part of the presentation which is just above the internal os, which we can examine by the gloved finger through the, that is felt through the os. So that is the presenting part. In cephalic presentation, the presenting part may be either a vertex, brow or a face presentation. So when the head is in the lower pole, Either of these, either a vertex, brow, or face can be the presenting part which can be palpated through the os. In breech presentation, the fetal legs are the presenting part. They can be either flexed, extended, or footling. And what is attitude? So attitude is the relation of the different parts of the fetus to one another. This is called the attitude. So it can be either flexed, extended. So the parts, different parts in relation to each other. This is the attitude. So what is the universal attitude? Flexion. So what do you mean by flexion? The attitude flexion. So here there is universal flexion of all the joints of the fetus. In the first one is the neck. So the head will be flexed. Then all the limb and also the spine, everything will be in a flexed position to form a ovoid, and which nicely, snugly fits in the uterine ovoid. So that is the universal flexion, and this is the most common attitude of the fetus. And depending upon the degree of extension, that is extension of the neck. So this is complete flexion. So that is a vertex presentation. But depending upon the extension of the neck, so this is a mild extension which is called deflexed vertex, which is present in the occipito-posterior position. And here the engaging diameter is the occipito-frontal, which is 10.5. So universal flexion, the diameter is biparietal diameter, and suboccipito-bregmatic, which is 9.5 centimeters, which is the lowest. So this universal flexion will favor the normal vaginal delivery. Rest of them, there will be slight difficulty in the delivery of the baby. So slight deflection is called as deflexed vertex, where the occipitofrontal is the presenting diameter. A brow, a slightly more deflection or a slight extension. So here the diameter is mentovertical. It is 13 centimeters and it is unfavorable or the normal delivery cannot occur. Or a complete flexion of the neck is completely extended. Complete extension will cause the face presentation, where the mentum or the chin is the presenting part and the diameter is submentobregmatic, which is 9.5 centimeter. And this also normal delivery can occur. So here you can see the different attitude. The first picture depicts the cephalic presentation. This is a slight deflection, that is deflexed vertex, which favors the occipito-posterior position, and a slight extension causes brow presentation or the glabellar presentation, and complete extension of the neck will cause the face presentation. So different attitudes depending upon the deflection, different presentations can occur. So this is a face presentation where you can see the complete extension of the neck, and the mentum or the chin is the denominator or the presenting part. So next we'll discuss about the denominator. What is denominator? It is an arbitrary bony fixed point on the presenting part which comes in relation with the various quadrants of the maternal pelvis. So maternal pelvis is divided into right and left, posterior and anterior, and we'll divide into 8 parts. So depending on that, the bony fixed part of the presenting part which comes in relation with the various quadrants, that is called the denominator. So denominator depends on the presentation. So in a vertex, occipit is the denominator, and in face presentation, mentum is the denominator, and frontal eminence is the denominator in brow presentation. Sacrum is the sacrum is the denominator in breech presentation. Acromion in the shoulder presentation. So the denominator is different in different presentations, and you have to tell the denominator in every presentation, all the mal presentations and the normal presentation also. And position, it is the relation of the denominator to different quadrants of the pelvis. So as we have already discussed, the pelvis is divided into 8 parts. So 8 positions are described. So pelvis is divided into equal segments of 45 degrees to place the denominator. So it is divided into anterior, posterior, right and left position in reference to the maternal pelvis. And what is the most common position? So left occipito-anterior is the most common presentation. Next comes the right occipito-anterior, right, then the right occipito-posterior, and the last one is the left occipito-posterior. So as you can see, left occipito-anterior is the most common presentation. Both right and left occipito-anteriors, most of them constitutes around 80 to 90% of the presentations. And the occipito-posteriors are very rare. And of that, ROP is more common than the LOP because of the presence of sigmoid colon, which is present in the left position, left side of the abdomen. So here you can see the various positions. So this is direct depending upon, this is the in relation to the pubic symphysis anteriorly, and posteriorly is the sacrum. So these two are the bony prominences in relation to this we can describe. So next, first is the left occipito-anterior. Clockwise will go like this. This is the left occipito-transverse. So the sagittal suture which is present in the fetal skull, in relation to that we'll see. So occipit is the denominator in the vertex presentation. So occipit, it is present in the left quadrant and the sagittal suture is in the oblique like this. Then that is called the left occipito-anterior. When the sagittal suture of the fetal skull is present in the transverse diameter, then transversely in the pelvis, then we call it as left occipito-transverse. And if it is present in the posterior quadrant on the left side, we call it as left occipito-posterior. And this is the direct occipito-posterior, which is one of the malrotations which occur in the occipito-posterior position. And next comes the right occipito-posterior and right occipito-transverse. And when the spine and also the sagittal suture of the fetal skull is present on the right side, then we call it as right occipito-anterior. So the positions are described in relation to the bony pelvis. So the same thing is depicted in diagrammatic representation. So this is the pelvis and this is the pubic symphysis and the sacrum. So in relation to that, right side and left side, all the positions are described. So as you can see here, the occiput is the denominator, and in relation to the pelvis, this is the left side of the maternal pelvis. So occiput is present in the oblique diameter on the left side in the anterior quadrant. So this is the left occipito-anterior. And occiput here, as you can see, it is in the posterior direction. So it is in the posterior part of the pelvis. So this is the occipito-left, occipito-posterior. And here you can see right and left, right occipito-posterior and left occipito-posterior in relation to the maternal pelvis. So how will you examine the antenatal women when she comes to the OPD? How will you examine? So here, first you have to take a verbal consent of the patient. So you have to explain what you are doing, what you are examining, and in briefly what you are examining, and take her consent. And some privacy should be there. Make her lie in the dorsal position or a couch, and ask the antenatal woman to slightly flex her legs at the hip joint and also at the knee joint. A semi-flexed position is required. So you have to tell, or in the examination or in the case sheet writing, you have to write examine her and write in these 4 subheadings: inspection, palpation, auscultation, and internal examination or pervaginal examination. And you will confirm your findings with the ultrasound. So in the palpation, you have to see the height of the uterus and you have to demonstrate all the obstetric grips, which are called the Leopold maneuvers, and you have to describe in the same headings only. So on inspection, see, you have to stand on the right side of the patient, and with the semi-flexed semi-flexed knees, you have to expose the abdomen and see the structures. So first you have to see the contour of the uterus, whether it is convex or flattened anterior abdominal wall. So convex, when the back is anterior, in the occipito-anterior positions, the contour of the uterus is convex. In occipito-posterior position, there will be subumbilical flattening of the anterior abdominal wall. By this, you can differentiate between an occipito-anterior and occipito-posterior positions. So, and you have to see whether there is any undue enlargement of the uterus. First, you will ask the patient the history, the last menstrual period, and you will calculate the gestational age and also the expected date of delivery. But if you are seeing that there is some undue enlargement of the uterus, or the height of the uterus is corresponding to period of gestation, or it is very much enlarged on inspection, then you have to note it down. Like if there is any multiple gestation or polyhydramnios, there will be more, the height of uterus is more than the period of gestation, and you can see the enlargement. The skin also will be glistening if there is enlargement, undue enlargement. And you have to describe or write down the pigmentary changes of the skin because of the increased pigmentation of the, hello?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am. It is audible, ma'am.
We have to see the pigmentary changes in stria gravidarum or linea nigra. So linea nigra
PPT is not visible, ma'am.
Sorry. The inconvenience. So the pigmentary changes which are present on the skin, that is linea nigra or any changes like stria gravidarum, should be mentioned. And if there are any infections like fungal infections or any other infections also should be mentioned. And any scars on the abdomen like a Fannin steel or a subumbilical midline scar should be recorded in the case sheet. So coming to palpation, so how will you do the palpation? Here also you have to stand on the right side of the patient, face towards the, you have to turn towards the face of the antenatal woman, and first you have to see the height of the uterus. So first ask the patient to empty the bladder and see the fundal height with the ulnar border of your left hand. So with the left hand, you have to come from the xiphisternum lower down and see the resistance felt on the fundus. So by this, you can measure the fundal at least see the where the fundus is lying. So usually up to 12 weeks, the uterus is a pelvic organ, and after 12 weeks, it becomes an abdominal. You can palpate abdominally. And umbilicus corresponds to 20 weeks of gestation. And from the umbilicus, you have to draw 3 equidistant lines up to the xiphisternum, dividing the abdomen, upper abdomen, into 4 equal parts. So above the umbilicus, the first line corresponds to 28 weeks. So this is the umbilicus, and above that, that is the 28 weeks line. Next comes 32 weeks, 28, 24, 28, 32, and 36 weeks. 36 weeks corresponds to the xiphisternum. And from there, again, there will be decrease in the uterine size. So it corresponds to 32. 40 weeks corresponds to 32 weeks of gestation. So how will you differentiate between a 32-weeker and a 40-weeker? First, you have to go by the words of the patient. So you have to calculate from the LMP. Gestational age is calculated first, and by this you will have an idea how much is the gestational age. Then you have to see, palpate for the size of the head. In a 40-weeker, the size of the head is more and also it is hard. And a 32-weeker, the fetus is having a smaller head and it is relatively soft when you compare with the 40-weeker head. And also the liquor is less in a 40-weeker. The whole of it is, the whole of the uterus is filled with the fetus, and the liquor is less in a 40-weeker and liquor is more in a 32-weeker. And there is falling forwards of the fetus, and there is flank fullness. Flank fullness is present in a 40-weeker and it is not present in a 32-weeker. By this, you can differentiate between a 32-weeker and a 40-weeker. Next, you have to measure the symphysiofundal height with the tape and note down the height of the uterus in centimeters. Later, you have to see the girth and calculate the estimated fetal weight by this, by Johnson's formula. And height of the uterus. When is the height of the uterus more than period of gestation? In these conditions, like wrong dates, when the patient is not sure of her dates or she forgets the last menstrual period, or in cases of multiple gestation, that is twins or triplets. And next is the polyhydramnios, big baby, pelvic tumor, like fibroid complicating pregnancy, or an ovarian tumor complicating pregnancy, hydatiform mole, or a concealed accidental hemorrhage. In all these cases, the height of uterus is more than period of gestation. And in which cases the height of the uterus is less than the period of gestation. So in cases of, as we have discussed, in case of wrong dates, the first being the most common reason for the difference in the height of the uterus is the wrong dates. And scanty liquor, that is oligohydramnios, IUGR, intrauterine growth restriction, and intrauterine death. In all these cases, the height of uterus is less than the period of gestation. Next, we'll discuss about the obstetric grips, which are called the Leopold maneuvers. So there are 4 grips. You have to demonstrate all the 4 grips. So the first one being the fundal grip, or that is the first grip or the fundal grip. Second is the umbilical grip or the lateral grip. And the third or the first pelvic grip or the Paulick's grip is this third. And fourth one is the second pelvic grip or the fourth grip. Obstetric grip 4. So the first pelvic grip or the first Leopold grip, you have to place your arms on the fundus flat. Then you have to see the upper pole is occupied by cephalic or the podalic pole. That is breech presentation. So how will you differentiate between a breech and a head? So head, if head is smaller, regular, hard, and velotable. So the velotability is the most important finding in a cephalic presentation, or if it is a head. And if it is a breech, it is broad, soft, irregular, and non-palatable. So in a cephalic presentation, the upper pole is occupied by breech. So in this, you have to see whether the upper pole is occupied by a breech or a head. By this, you will know the presentation. Next is the second grip. So you have to move both your hands in the downward direction from the fundus along the side of the uterus to determine the lie of the fetus. So whether it is a longitudinal lie or a transverse or a oblique lie, and if it is present, if it is a longitudinal lie, the longitudinal ovoid of the fetus corresponds with the maternal spine. So then you have to see which side of the back, which side is the fetal back, whether it is on the right side or the left side. So on the side of the back, there will be a uniform boat-like rigidity. Uniformity is maintained. And on the opposite side, you will feel the small, irregular, lumpy limb buds. So by this, you can differentiate to which side is the fetal back. And the third grip is, how will you demonstrate the third grip? So you have to still face towards the head of the patient, and with the overstretched thumb and the four fingers of the right hand are placed over the lower pole of the uterus with the ulnar border of the right hand resting on the pubic symphysis. The presenting part can be diagnosed whether it is a cephalic pole or a podalic pole, and you can know whether the presenting part is engaged or not also in the first pelvic grip. Then second pelvic grip. In this, the most important thing is you have to turn towards the patient's feet. Till now, you are examining the patient with you facing the head of the patient. Now you have to turn towards the patient feet, and the four fingers of both the hands are placed on either side of the midline in the lower part of the uterus, parallel to the inguinal ligament. So by the fourth grip, what can you find out? You have to confirm the presenting part. Then you have to see whether it is a cephalic or a podalic or a breech presentation, and also you have to see the attitude of the presenting part, whether it is completely flexed or certain amount of deflection is present or not. So if it is a completely flexed head, the occiput is at a lower level than the sinciput. If it is a deflexed head, then both the sinciput and the occiput will be at the same level. By this, you can differentiate whether the head is completely flexed or a vertex presentation or occipito-posterior, or depending upon the relative positions of the sinciput and the occiput. And also you will confirm whether the presenting part is engaged or not. How will you do this? You try to insinuate your fingers below the presenting part, above the pubic symphysis. If it is a floating head, then you will be able to insinuate or approximate the fingers of both your hands in between the presenting part and the pubic symphysis. If not, if the head is engaged and has entered into the brim of the pelvis, then both your hands will be diverging. Next, you have to auscultate. First, you have to know where you can hear the fetal heart sounds. So, fetal heart is heard below the umbilicus in cephalic presentation and at the level of the umbilicus in a breech presentation. In occipito-anterior position, fetal heart is heard in the middle of the spino-umbilical line. That is, you have to draw a line from the anterior superior iliac spine to the umbilicus, and in between this, that is in the middle portion, you will hear the fetal heart towards the fetal back. On which side is the back, you have to identify. Then draw a spino-umbilical line, and in the middle part of the line, you will hear the fetal heart in an occipito-anterior position. If it is an occipito-posterior position, then the fetal heart is heard in the flanks. So the back is posterior and the heart is also more away from the midline. So you will hear the fetal heart in the flanks. Then internal examination is done. In all the cases, you will not do an internal examination. You will do an internal examination only in a term presentation. Term gestation. That is after 37 completed weeks in a primigravida and in a multigravida, wherever it is indicated, like if she is in a labor or she is complaining of draining PV or some discharge, then only you'll do an internal examination. You will not do for a preterm labor. So what will you see while doing an internal examination or a vaginal examination? You will diagnose. You can diagnose the presenting part. And if the patient is in labor and os is open, then you can palpate the sutures also. So you have to see the position of the sagittal suture in relation to the maternal pelvis. By this, you can diagnose the position, whether the baby is in occipito-posterior position or an anterior position. Next, what is engagement? So when the greatest horizontal diameter in horizontal plane, the biparatal diameter has passed through the pelvic brim, then it is called the head is engaged. And when you do a pervaginal examination, where do you find the head? So when do you say that head is engaged? So when you do a vaginal examination, the head is at the level of ischial spines, that we call it as zero station. So when the head is at zero station, then only we'll say that the head is engaged. If it is above that, you have to tell the station. It is -1, -2 or -3, like that. You have to say the engagement, whether the head is engaged or not. So when the biparatal diameter has passed through the pelvic brim, then it corresponds to the issue. The lowest part or the denominator or the occiput is at the level of the zero station or ischial spines. Then we say the head is engaged. And on per abdominal examination, you will not palpate the occiput. The head has already gone through the brim of the pelvis and entered into the cavity. So there is the head. Occiput cannot be palpated per abdominally. And vaginal, it is at the level of the ischial spines. And in most of the cases, 90%, 80 to 90% of the cases in a primigravida, after the completion of 37 weeks, the head is engaged. If it is not engaged after completion of 37 weeks, then you have to suspect that there is some problem. Then these are the causes. You have to see which one fits and why the head is not engaging. It can be either a deflexed head or a cephalopelvic disproportion or a polyhydramnios, or lower segment is not well formed, or it is a hydrocephalus, placenta previa, pelvic tumors, high inclination pelvis, or it can be functional also. But in a multigravida, engagement will not occur after 37 weeks. When will the engagement occur in a multigravida? Usually it occurs during labor, especially in the second stage of labor. After full dilatation, in the second stage of labor, the engagement occurs in a multigravida. But that is not a case in primigravida. In the last weeks of the term, that is after 38, 39 weeks, usually the head engages in a primigravida. So thank you. If you have any doubts, you can ask.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. If anyone has doubts, you can please come up. I'll be happy to clear your doubts.
I think there are no doubts, ma'am. They will put in chat box, ma'am, if they have any.
Okay, sure. So, shall I log out?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.